Have you ever wondered why some people seem to hold power effortlessly, while others struggle endlessly to be heard, respected, or even noticed? Picture a meeting at work. One person speaks, and the room falls silent, listening intently. Another makes the same point, yet their words dissolve into the background, ignored. What is happening here? What invisible force separates authority from insignificance? This is not just about money, titles, or charisma. It is something subtler yet far more decisive. And once you see it, you will begin to recognize it everywhere. In family conversations, in politics, in friendships, and even in the way you speak to yourself. Thomas Hobbes, the 17th century philosopher, believed that human beings are driven not only by survival but by something even deeper, the search for recognition. For Hobbes, power is not merely the ability to control others or accumulate resources. It is the silent authority that comes from commanding respect. The invisible weapon is speech itself, the power of words to shape perception, to inspire trust, and to enforce influence without ever raising a hand. Think about it. Wars begin and end with words. Relationships thrive or collapse depending on how we speak, or fail to speak. A single phrase can inspire courage, heal an old wound, or ignite resentment that burns for years. Words are not just sounds. They are instruments of power, invisible yet stronger than any weapon forged of iron. But here is the unsettling truth. Most people go through life unaware of this. They underestimate their words, carelessly scattering them without realizing the force they carry. They speak to vent, to fill silence, or to please. And in doing so, they give away the very tool that could grant them authority and respect. What if the secret to power was already in your hands, hidden in plain sight? What if the way you spoke, not louder, not harsher, but more deliberate, could shift the balance in your relationships, your career, even in how you see yourself? Today, I want to invite you to uncover this invisible weapon, to see how Hobbes's insight can radically change the way you approach conflict, influence, and growth. And if this resonates with you, leave a comment below sharing a moment when someone's words carried more weight than their position. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe, because this journey is only just beginning. Imagine for a moment that you are entering a conversation with a colleague, a partner, or even a stranger. In the usual course of things, you might react impulsively, letting irritation or anxiety leak through your tone. But what if instead, you carried with you the quiet certainty that your words have weight? What if you believed that every sentence you spoke could alter the way others perceive you and the way you perceive yourself? Let's stretch this further. Picture a heated argument that would normally spiral into shouting or withdrawal. Now, instead of fueling the chaos, your voice becomes measured, intentional, and calm. Rather than provoking defensiveness, it invites reflection. Rather than creating distance, it draws people closer. Imagine how different your relationships would feel if your words consistently carried this kind of authority. Not authority based on fear, but on presence. It is easy to think that life's course is determined by external circumstances, opportunities offered, luck, or the unpredictability of others. But Hobbes pushes us to look inward. He suggests that power emerges from how we position ourselves in relation to others. And positioning begins with language. The promises we make, the respect we show, the boundaries we articulate. Now consider your own life. How many opportunities have been lost, not because you lacked intelligence or capability, but because your words failed to register? Perhaps you softened your ideas until they sounded uncertain. Perhaps you spoke too quickly, hoping to get through the discomfort. Or maybe you never spoke at all, fearing rejection more than invisibility. But what if, from this point forward, you began to experiment with another possibility? Not manipulation, not rehearsed slogans, but the kind of speech that arises from deep conviction. Imagine what doors could open if you learned to speak in a way that naturally commanded respect, not through volume, but through clarity and sincerity. This is not a fantasy. It is a skill that anyone can cultivate. The difference between being overlooked and being heard is not luck. It is a discipline of attention to your words, your tone, and your intention. Hobbes believed that those who master this discipline do not merely survive the chaos of human interactions, they rise above it, steering it toward outcomes they choose. So ask yourself, if your words truly carried the power to reshape your reality, how differently would you speak today? Most of us have been taught to believe that power belongs to those with wealth, physical strength, or official titles. We imagine kings, CEOs, or celebrities. Yet Hobbes shatters this illusion. He reminds us that power is not only a matter of possessions or status. It is something far more fragile and far more enduring: the ability to shape how others see the world through words. Here is the disruptive truth. Authority does not begin with money or force. It begins with speech. The illusion many live under is that language is merely a tool for transferring information, like passing notes across a table. But in reality, speech is the battlefield where respect is won or lost. Those who underestimate this truth wander through life disarmed, unaware of the weapon they hold. Think about how often silence, careless words, or nervous chatter erode someone's credibility. A brilliant idea poorly expressed dies unheard. A strong conviction, diluted by uncertainty, fails to inspire. Meanwhile, another person with less knowledge but greater command of language sways the room with ease. Is this unfair? Perhaps, but it is real. This is where Hobbes diverges sharply from the comforting lies of modern self-help. He does not promise that everyone's voice will be equally valued. Instead, he confronts us with the reality that human beings naturally respond to the power of words, whether for good or for harm. To deny this is to remain vulnerable. To accept it is to begin training your most overlooked muscle, your capacity for deliberate speech. Now here is the uncomfortable paradox. We live in a time saturated with words, texts, emails, social media posts, endless commentary. Yet never before has language felt so cheap, so disposable. Hobbes would see this as a dangerous decline, because the more words lose their weight, the more people surrender their influence without noticing. So the break with normality is this: power is not just in possessions, achievements, or appearances. It is in how you speak. Not once, not occasionally, but habitually. Every casual remark, every explanation, every moment of silence, these are not neutral. They are either strengthening or weakening your invisible weapon. Here is the challenge. Are you still clinging to the illusion that your words don't matter? Or are you ready to step into the uncomfortable truth that every sentence you speak is shaping the balance of power around you? Thomas Hobbes lived through one of the most turbulent centuries in European history. Civil wars, shifting monarchies, and religious conflicts threatened to tear society apart. In his masterpiece Leviathan, Hobbes argued that humans, left unchecked, descend into a war of all against all. But here's the key. He believed that peace and order were possible not through brute force alone, but through agreements, through words, promises, and covenants. This matters for us because Hobbes was not describing abstract politics. He was describing human nature. He saw that people do not submit simply to swords. They submit to speech that convinces, commands, and binds. A king's power is fragile without the belief of his subjects. A contract is only paper until words breathe obligation into it. Consider the courtroom. The gavel itself is powerless. It is the judge's words, backed by shared belief in the system, that carry weight. Or think of Martin Luther King Jr. His power did not come from weapons, but from words that redefined justice for a generation. Hobbes helps us understand why such figures endure. They wielded language as the most decisive instrument of power. But let's not romanticize this. Hobbes was brutally realistic. He warned that words can deceive as much as they can unite. A broken promise corrodes trust faster than silence. Empty rhetoric can enslave crowds as easily as it can liberate them. That is why he insisted on clarity. Language must be precise, promises must be binding, and authority must be grounded in consistent speech. For us today, this means that speaking well is not just about eloquence. It is about integrity. Authority grows not from flashy words, but from reliable ones. Your influence deepens when people discover that your words align with reality, that you do what you say, that your speech carries truth rather than convenience. Hobbes gives us permission to take language seriously again. He reminds us that if we want to build respect, lead effectively, or even cultivate inner strength, we cannot afford to treat words casually. Each phrase becomes a stone in the foundation of trust, or a crack in it. So ask yourself, are your words building a structure strong enough to sustain respect? Or are they quietly eroding the ground beneath your feet? Have you noticed how, in certain conversations, you leave feeling diminished without fully understanding why? It was not that someone insulted you directly. Instead, subtle patterns in their words stripped away your sense of value. Hobbes would not dismiss this as coincidence. He would say it is the invisible dynamic of power at work, operating beneath the surface of every interaction. These dynamics are rarely obvious. Sometimes it is the way someone consistently interrupts you, as if your thoughts are less urgent. Other times, it is the casual dismissal. That's interesting, but which quietly undermines your contribution. Over time, these patterns accumulate, shaping not only how others see you, but how you begin to see yourself. Hobbes understood that humans crave recognition. We are not satisfied with mere survival. We hunger for acknowledgement, for proof that our words matter. When we receive it, we grow bolder. When we are denied it, we shrink. And this is the silent battlefield he was pointing to. Power is negotiated daily in the exchange of language, in whose words are granted space and whose are ignored. But here is where most people remain blind. They assume that respect is something given at random, determined by luck, personality, or social status. They fail to see the recurring patterns of speech that reinforce or erode their authority. They overlook how small verbal habits, apologies before every sentence, excessive fillers, or nervous laughter, signal insecurity and weaken their presence. This is not about faking confidence. It is about noticing the architecture of speech and refusing to sabotage yourself within it. Every conversation has an unspoken structure. Those who sense it and learn to navigate it gain influence. Those who ignore it are carried along by it, powerless to steer. Consider how often you replay conversations in your head, regretting not what you said, but how you said it. The sigh that made you sound defeated. The rushed tone that betrayed anxiety. The vague wording that left your idea fragile and unconvincing. These are the invisible cracks where authority leaks away. The truth is, most of the forces shaping your influence are not dramatic events, but invisible patterns you have repeated for years. Hobbes invites us to step back and see them clearly, to realize that every moment of speech is an opportunity either to reinforce respect or to diminish it. So here is the question. Are you aware of the invisible patterns shaping your presence? Or are you letting them quietly dictate the limits of your influence? Sometimes the most powerful truths can be carried in the simplest phrases. Hobbes himself had a gift for such clarity. He declared that covenants without the sword are but words. At first glance, this sounds harsh, almost cynical. But beneath it lies a revelation. Words alone can build the structures of trust and power, yet without consistency, they collapse into dust. Think of it like this. Every promise you make is a bridge. If you fail to uphold it, the bridge crumbles. Not just for that moment, but for every crossing afterward. One broken word makes every future word weaker. In contrast, a fulfilled promise multiplies your authority. Over time, your speech becomes unshakable ground. Here are some truths worth engraving into memory. Words are not neutral. They are either building trust or eroding it. Power is not in speaking more, but in speaking what lasts. Silence can be power, but only when it is intentional, not fearful. The weight of your voice is measured by the consistency of your actions. Each of these phrases works like a blade, cutting through the illusions that keep many people powerless. We often think authority requires dramatic gestures or loud declarations. In reality, it is forged quietly, sentence by sentence, habit by habit. Consider how often you hear empty affirmations in everyday life, promises of, "I'll call you tomorrow," or "We'll definitely meet soon." These words cost nothing, yet their casual use empties them of value. Hobbes would argue that such carelessness corrodes the very foundation of society. If speech cannot be trusted, chaos creeps in. The lesson for us is direct. Treat words like currency. Spend them wisely, invest them carefully, and never counterfeit them. Empty speech may gain short-term comfort, but it always carries long-term debt. Memorable truths stay with us because they resonate with what we already know deep down. You feel their weight not because they are new, but because they awaken something you had neglected. Hobbes simply gives language to what we have all experienced, that our words, when careless, enslave us. When deliberate, they free us. So pause and ask yourself, which of your words today will stand the test of time, and which will crumble the moment they are spoken? Here lies a paradox that Hobbes forces us to confront. Power and vulnerability are not opposites. In fact, they often coexist in the same breath. When you speak, you expose yourself. Your thoughts, your fears, your hopes, all of them become visible. Yet it is precisely in this exposure that true authority can emerge. Most people assume the path to power is through invulnerability, never showing weakness, never revealing doubt. But Hobbes would caution us here. Words that pretend strength but lack authenticity ring hollow. People may obey them for a moment, but they do not inspire lasting respect. On the other hand, words spoken with honesty, even when they reveal uncertainty, can command deeper trust because they are grounded in reality. Think of two leaders. One blusters with confidence, dismissing every challenge. The other admits what they do not know but speaks with clarity about what they believe. Which one would you follow? For Hobbes, the second leader embodies a more durable form of power because their words align with truth rather than illusion. This paradox extends into our personal lives as well. Silence, when born from fear, weakens us. But silence chosen deliberately, when we refuse to feed a pointless argument, can be an act of strength. Vulnerability, when careless, leaves us exposed. But vulnerability offered as a conscious choice, framed with clarity, draws people closer. The real secret is that words do not need to deny vulnerability to wield authority. Instead, they transform it. A friend who says, "I was wrong, and I want to repair this," gains more respect than one who hides behind excuses. A colleague who admits, "I don't have the full answer, but here's my proposal," is taken more seriously than one who bluffs. Hobbes helps us see that authority is not about masking humanity. It is about mastering the language that frames it. This is the surprising truth. Power is not the absence of weakness. It is the ability to speak through weakness in a way that strengthens connection. Vulnerability without words can isolate us. Vulnerability shaped by words can bind us to others. So here is the reflection. Are you hiding behind silence, mistaking it for strength? Or are you willing to embrace the paradox? That true authority often emerges in the very moments you allow your words to reveal your humanity. Imagine stepping into a room knowing that your words will not be wasted. Imagine speaking and seeing faces turned toward you, not because you demand attention, but because your presence commands it naturally. This is not arrogance. It is the quiet confidence of someone who has learned the weight of language. And the reward? It is far greater than influence alone. When Hobbes spoke of power, he was not merely describing domination. He was pointing to security, the deep assurance that comes when you no longer live at the mercy of others' moods or disregard. Mastery of words gives you the ability to shape your reality rather than be passively shaped by it. It allows you to move through conflict without being consumed, to assert yourself without aggression, and to create harmony where once there was tension. The practical reward is clear. Opportunities begin to open. At work, your ideas are taken seriously. In relationships, your needs are heard without defensiveness. In friendships, your honesty builds loyalty rather than distance. But there is also a quieter, more profound reward: self-respect. The more your words align with truth and intention, the less you betray yourself. You no longer carry the gnawing regret of things left unsaid or promises broken. Here is the secret. The external respect you crave from others begins with the internal respect you cultivate for yourself. When you treat your words as instruments of integrity, you begin to trust your own voice. And when you trust your own voice, others instinctively begin to trust it too. This is why Hobbes' insight matters so deeply today. In a world overwhelmed with noise, those who learn to speak with clarity, precision, and sincerity rise above the static. They are not louder, they are clearer. They are not manipulative, they are grounded. The reward is not only that people listen, but that people remember. So pause for a moment and imagine, what would change in your life if from this day forward your words consistently reflected both your strength and your sincerity? The path is demanding, yes. It requires practice, self-awareness, and courage. But the promise is undeniable. A life where your presence is felt, your words are trusted, and your influence endures long after the conversation has ended. Ask yourself honestly, are you ready to claim that reward, or will you continue leaving your greatest weapon unused? To fully grasp Hobbes's teaching, we need to see the conceptual framework that holds it together. At the heart of his philosophy lies a vision of human beings as both vulnerable and ambitious. Vulnerable, because without protection we fear the chaos of others. Ambitious because we desire not only safety, but recognition, dignity, and influence. Hobbes believed that this tension, the fear of losing security and the hunger for respect, drives all human interaction. To resolve it, societies create contracts and rules. But what makes these contracts binding? Not weapons, not wealth, but words. Promises, oaths, and laws are nothing but language agreed upon. Strip away the words, and the structures collapse. This is why Hobbes saw speech as humanity's most potent weapon. It does what no sword can. It binds the future. When you give your word, you shape not only the present but the horizon of what comes next. This is the foundation of trust, the glue of cooperation, the seed of civilization itself. Now let's connect this framework to everyday life. Consider your personal social contract, the agreements you live by with colleagues, friends, and family. Every expectation, every boundary, every trust rests on words exchanged. When you neglect them, chaos seeps in, misunderstandings, resentments, and fractures. When you honor them, stability and respect take root. Psychology reinforces Hobbes's insight. Studies in cognitive behavioral theory show that the language we use shapes not only how others see us, but how we see ourselves. The words you choose become patterns of thought, and these patterns sculpt your behavior. Say, "I'll try" often enough, and you start believing in your own fragility. Say, "I will" with consistency, and you reinforce your capacity to act. The framework is clear. Words form the architecture of both society and self. Ignore this, and you drift into confusion. Embrace it, and you begin to wield authority over your own life. Seen through Hobbes' lens, the invisible weapon is not mystical, it is practical. It is the discipline of treating language as the foundation of power. Master it, and you are no longer a victim of circumstance. You become a builder of trust, a shaper of order, a leader in the truest sense. So the question remains, are you living by accident, letting words scatter without weight? Or are you consciously constructing the framework of respect and authority that your life depends on? Now we arrive at the heart of it all. Hobbes revealed something most people spend their entire lives overlooking. That power is not always visible, not always tied to wealth, position, or brute force. It is woven into the words we choose and the promises we keep. The invisible weapon is already in your hands. The only question is whether you will wield it or waste it. Think about the conversations waiting for you tomorrow. Perhaps with a colleague who doubts your ability. Perhaps with a friend who needs your honesty. Perhaps with yourself, as you confront the inner dialogue that either weakens or strengthens you. Each of these moments will be shaped by language. Will your words scatter like dust, or will they land with the weight of integrity? Here is the call. Begin speaking as though your words matter, because they do. Speak less, but with greater precision. Replace vague promises with clear commitments. Use silence not as escape, but as presence. And when you reveal your vulnerability, do it not as apology, but as an act of strength that draws people closer. The reward is not only external respect, though that will come. The deeper reward is self-respect. You will begin to trust your own voice, to believe in the consistency between your words and your actions. And when that happens, your presence changes. People lean in, they listen, they remember. Hobbes challenges us to strip away illusions and confront reality. Speech builds the world we live in. It can enslave or liberate, corrode or create. The difference lies in how consciously we choose to use it. So I leave you with a question worth carrying beyond this video. Which words will you allow to shape your future? The careless ones that weaken trust, or the deliberate ones that build it? If this reflection stirred something in you, I invite you to share your thoughts in the comments. Which moment in your life proved that words carry more power than titles or appearances? Your story might be the very insight someone else needs today. And if you found value here, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Because together we are not chasing empty motivation, we are reclaiming the hidden strength that Hobbes revealed centuries ago. The invisible weapon of words, the quiet force that grants true power.